Hello, my friend. Welcome to today's practice. The name of today's class is Find Your Work. That's what we're really all here to do when we come onto our yoga mat. And it's really up to each one of us individually to figure out what our specific, unique work is supposed to be in our movement. And the reason for that is because it's just not realistic to think that a movement teacher or professional is going to be able to understand your precise genetics and your history and your habits. And so we can give you sort of the mechanisms for how do I make the choices, what are my green lights and what are my red lights, but ultimately we want you and each individual person to feel confident and empowered in those decisions. So today's class is going to be all about figuring out how to make those choices in a lot of the different common movements that we do in yoga so that you feel more confident afterwards. All right, let's go ahead and get started down on our backs. My name is Brenton if you're new to me. This is my friend Ollie back here. Welcome to you at home as well. Alrighty, so when you come down here onto your back, ground your feet down. And we're going to try to find a neutral spine. And this is where you're going to start to feel really quickly your habits and your history of how your spine likes to spend time. So push down with your feet, pick your hips up and scooch them down. And as you place your pelvis down on the floor, you want to feel the weight resting in your sacrum. Your sacrum is your low back, and it's in between your little back dimples back there. When your sacrum's on the floor, you should feel like your frontal hip bones are really heavy and your belly button goes down. Now start wiggling out of your pelvis a little bit with your chest. When you lay your chest on the ground, you want to feel your low ribs make contact with the floor, and all of your ribs all the way up to your neck make contact with the floor. You want to feel your shoulder blades on the floor with your chest open. And now the last piece that you want to feel touching the floor is the back of your head. So go ahead and take your hands back there. Scoop your head up off the ground with your chin tucked into your throat. Lightly draw it back and see if you can ground it on the floor so that your forehead and your chin are at the same height. Now you're going to see here how accessible are all of these different pieces of your spine, because this will give you a clue about what your work should be. We're always trying to have this be available to us. Now, what if you thought of this as just one joint change in your hips? And so you're thinking to yourself, I'm not really trying to change anything in my torso as I lift my pelvis up off the ground a couple of inches. Now we want our big butt muscles to really be driving this action. So you got to see how sleepy your bottom is. A lot of us have really sleepy glutes. And so to get these butt puppies turned on, a little pulsing up and down might do the trick. And as you go up and down, if you feel like yours are sleepier, then you can turn your heels in and your toes open and see if that changes things. Now, when you do this, you want your low back to feel really nice and spacious. So you know your history if you're a low back person. What you're trying to find here in your practice is places where your low back feels spacious, elongated, free of pain. And then you want to try to strengthen your muscles in those positions. Let's hold our pelvis up, really feel the core drawn in. So no part of the front of the body is poofing up toward the sky. Feel all of that space in the back of your neck. And then stretch the fingers up to the sky and see how this feels on the shoulders. So if you're a shoulder person, you're going to have to find positions and places to play that feel accessible and pain-free to you. From here, let's squeeze our fists in and then stretch the fingers out. We're going to do that a few times. Squeeze and stretch, squeeze and stretch. We want to do this over and over and over again until we feel the muscles in the forearms turn on. So if you are a shoulder person or a wrist person, you might find that you benefit from doing more of this. As you feel ready, Go ahead, return your pelvis down to the floor, return your hands down to the floor, and check your breathing. Breathe calmly and slowly in and out through your nose, nice and low in your belly. Okay, sacrum, shoulder blades, and the back of the head are on the floor. And then we can lift the knees up over the pelvis. So see if this is accessible to you. And if it's not accessible to you, then don't do the whole thing. Do one leg at a time here, and that can be enough. You're working your hips, but you're also going to work your core here. So go ahead and take your hands onto your tummy and just feel what's going to happen underneath your hands here as you start to lengthen your right heel towards the floor and then pull it back up. Lengthen your left foot towards the floor and pull it back up. So I like this because this is a good example of how you can just do a piece of the movement. Maybe you only go a couple of inches, and that's a really nice way to find your work in anything we might be doing, which is to say do less of it, a smaller range of motion, and then let it build up over time. Feel what's going on underneath your hands because you want to try to have nothing happen underneath them. You're holding super duper strong. Good job. As you feel ready, release and relax that. Check in with your breathing again. And as you feel ready, we'll come over and up. So however you'd like to do that. Oftentimes these transitions take a little bit of personal playtime to figure out really the best way for you. We're going to come forward, reorient ourselves in space, and take ourselves down to the elbows. So if you have something going on with your elbows, you might benefit from putting some more padding underneath there, especially if it feels really bony down there. That can be a complaint for some people. And then we want to feel the shoulders in a strong but comfortable position. So to do that, hands either wide or clasped. You decide what's going to work better for you. But you want to try before you come up into dolphin pose to feel the muscles working in your chest and your armpits and your upper back. Go ahead and tuck the toes under, lift the knees off the floor any amount. You could look more like a little curled ball rather than like a straight leg dolphin. It's really anything that's accessible. Oftentimes the first step in finding your work is just finding something that you can do. Oh, I can do that. Okay, good. Let's celebrate that. Good job. Go ahead and take the knees down to the floor and come up to the hands. Weight the shoulders over the wrists, but weight your fingers more than your wrists and start to feel, how do your wrists feel here? Lift your wrists up off the floor, lower them back down. If that's too much, then shift your weight back a little bit and do the same thing. Here you're learning how to use your fingers, the palms of your hands, and the forearms. So if you're a wrist person, you're gonna really benefit from taking multiple breaks in your practice to do things like this, and then your weight bearing should start to feel more accessible. Shift the shoulders over the wrists. We'll move through cat-cow here. On the inhale, lengthening the heart up, and the head comes up, but the back of the neck stays long. And then curling in each bit of the spine, rounding up between the shoulder blades. Go on your own a few more times. So often as we age, our spine loses the ability to flex and extend. And for most of us, our spines are used to being really mobile in certain places that we use all the time, and in other places they're stuck. So this is a really great opportunity to try to move the bits that are stuck. After this last one, come to a neutral spine, tuck the toes under, and start to stretch out your feet by shifting your hips back. And this is where you might be like, oh, my knees, okay. If your knees stop you, that's fine. If it's your feet that stop you, then you can come all the way back and upright until you feel, okay, this is enough. And the enough that you're looking for is where you can breathe nice and easily. Even if the sensation is very dramatic, it's okay for it to be very intense, but you want to be able to breathe. This is a really great thing for the feet to get stretched out in this way. As we feel ready, hinge forward from the hips, shift forward onto the hands, lift the knees off the ground and walk the hands back for what we'll call a happy squat. So our happy squat is feet nice and wide, and this is kind of your first time coming into a shape like this, where you get to see if the floor is a realistic place for you to have your hands. And if the answer is no, then come on up to your legs. Don't worry about looking clunky. It's not about being graceful. You might also have your hands on yoga blocks or on some furniture in front of you. But get deep in your knees, deep in your hips here, and long through your spine. Breathe. Scoop the tailbone, push down through the feet. Start to slowly come all the way on up to stand. And then step the feet right underneath the hip sockets with the outer edges parallel to each other. So you're gonna have to look down to see that. Take your hands onto your pelvis and notice if your pelvis kind of shifts forward into the front of your feet. That's very common. So lift all 10 toes up off the floor and pull your pelvis back until it's stacked over the heels. Sitting bones at the base of the pelvis right down here should be stacked right up over the heels. Now, just like you were lying on the floor, take your hand to your sacrum, your other hand behind your head. Use the hand behind your head to gently pull your skull up and back, and start to feel here like you're on an imaginary floor, like you're standing behind a wall. Okay, so from here we want to keep the pelvis up over the heels as we come up onto the tippy toes and then come back down. We want to get right up over that big toe, and we want to not lean or like thrust the pelvis forward to initiate the motion. So you want to keep your pelvis back over your heels and really use the muscles in your feet and your ankles and your calves to get you up. Good job. You can release your hands if you like. If you find them helpful there, go ahead and keep them there. We're not changing anything else except for taking the left knee up in front of the body and then marching that forward. Keep your pelvis right stacked up over your left heel, march that forward. This time as the left knee comes up, we're going to corkscrew it in the pelvis, rotating it left and right. If you have your hands on your hips here, you can feel where your work should be, because your work is in all the places where you're kind of falling or your bones are moving. The only bone that's moving is the thigh in the pelvis. Everything else works to hold strong. Left foot down, keep the sitting bone up over the heel as the right leg comes up. Same. Getting your hips to work, and you see you're not trying to go into any painful range. And over time, this will open up for you. Good job. Take your right foot down, outer edges of the feet parallel to each other, just as an experiment. This is the way the legs are set in neutral. And with the hands onto the hips, hinge forward just at the hip joint as you come over the legs, and then stand right back on up. So try to get the movement to happen at the hips. We'll take a few more of these, really getting right back into those strong glutes that we turned on in our bridge pose. And this time as we hinge forward, bend the knees so that the hands can come down to the floor or again to blocks or an ottoman, and then step the right foot back, knee down to the floor. If this is too much on the knee, always put some padding there because that's totally legitimate, and see if we can stand upright. If this doesn't work with the knee down, you can always lift your knee and do it at that higher version here. This is a really great way to use the floor to plug the legs into the pelvis. Take the arms down by the side, feel the whole front body wash into the back body, and now find some place for the shoulders to work. Start by bending the elbows, and then maybe sliding up towards cactus, potentially all the way up to the sky. As we feel ready, What we'll do is we'll take the hands down. We'll pivot and twist open on that right knee. So we're facing the side of the mat and our hips are now open. So get your right hip bone right over the center of your right knee. And so this right leg underneath you is really learning how to be strong. And now use the left foot to zip the left leg into the pelvis as well. Stretch the right arm all the way up to the sky. So now you feel a long line through that whole side. And you want to stay lifted through both sides of the ribs as you stretch and reach up over the left side of the pelvis. Okie dokie, we're gonna see how this is gonna work for us. We're gonna tip the right fingers down to the floor, lean onto them, see if this is accessible. Again, you might have your hand up on something higher. And if it feels okay, left leg reaches out to the side. You decide if you're ready to go on, bending the left knee, squeezing it into the torso, and then pushing out through the leg. Doing that 3 times total. This might not be your work, so that's your job to figure it out. This time we're gonna frame the floor, take both hands down, so we're facing the back of the mat, tabletop position. And in this tabletop position, knees in, feet out, so your legs are internally rotated, and cat-cow the spine again. With that intention of finding the bits that are stuck. The bits that are used to moving, they're gonna wanna be the stars of the show. So it's your job to figure out the little places that have been excluded this whole time and be nice to them. Okay, so meet in your back bend position where the shoulder blades are coming together. Really feel the shoulder blades together. What we'll do from here is we'll point the feet back. We're gonna keep the shoulders exactly where it is, but you're gonna pick up the navel and then step the feet back one at a time to plank. So breathe, hold it here. Shoulder blades in neutral on the back. Tap the knees down to the floor. And as you feel ready, bend the elbows, come all the way down. Slide your hands back a little bit so that they're more under your elbows, if you can manage that. If not, hands forward is fine. And by the way, if being on your belly is not super comfortable, you might like tucking a pillow under the front of your pelvis. That can always be a nice way to get you to feel a bit more comfortable. What we'll do here is we'll imagine that the hands are kind of scraping back to the back of the mat as we begin to lift the chest just an inch away from the floor. And then as you feel ready, come all the way back down. So we're experimenting with low cobra here. So the hands are active, making the arms active into the shoulders, and you're very subtly waving the spine up and down. Feeling the spine is a unit that starts at your tailbone, way down below your pelvis. When you feel ready, push up to the knees. Walk the knees underneath you so you're in tabletop position. Tuck the toes under, and again begin to push off the hands and walk back so that you're stretching out your feet. So the second time, yeah, knees on the ground, you're good. So the second time you come into it, you see if it's a little bit more accessible to you. And then you can gather this information about yourself, and you might say, wow, the second time I feel tired, or I feel more energized. And now you have a better idea of what your work is. Okay, hands down, lift off the knees, push the hands back and separate the feet really wide as you come into your happy squat. So the hands reach forward onto something that just helps you get long in the spine. You might even be doing this over a countertop. But the point is get super long through all sides of the torso. Scoop the tailbone, slowly curl your way all the way up to stand. Once you get all the way up there, feet underneath the hip sockets with the outer edges of the feet parallel to each other. Use the hands to pull the pelvis back over the heels. For most of us, it'll probably be forward. You see if that's true for you. Get your spine in neutral, and now get up on the tippy toes, right up over the big toe. And try to not do this thrusting with the hips. You want your pelvis to resist this. Like somebody's actually trying to pull your pelvis back as you come up onto your tippy toes. Good job. Okay. Here we go. We're going to stand tall. Lift the left knee up in front of us. March it forward so you step the heel down. Keep the left sitting bone over the left heel. Step down. With this one, hold. This time we're going to pulse in the hip socket here. So see if this is accessible. If you feel clicking in here, you have some pain or pinching in the socket, that's good information for you. It means you need to find neutral in your pelvis and do that with the leg down here or in another position. Good. March it forward. Right leg. All the way down. Outer edges of the feet parallel to each other. Maybe reach the arms up if that feels good. You're the one who knows. On the exhale, hinge forward over the legs. Bend the knees. Step the left foot back and the knee down to the floor. Come on up to our low lunge. So you spend some time here to get organized, legs into pelvis. Starting with the arms down by the side, feel the front body wash into the back body. Maybe bend the elbows and find a shoulder arrangement that will work for you. Try to have your shoulder movement really come from your shoulders, not from your ribs or your spine. Good job. Taking the hands down, use that to support you as you anchor the left leg open and you come back upright. So you're facing the side of your mat, left sitting bone right up over the center of that left knee, legs pulling in. See if you can find a line from your left knee through the left fingertips all the way up. And you feel here, do you kind of curl in? Do you combine this with some other spinal movement like a back bend or a curl or something? We're not trying to do that right now. We're trying to get nice and long. And now you deliberately add just a little side bend. Feel if your pelvis starts shifting around there. As you feel ready, we're gonna tip over the left side like a little teapot, hand on the ground. If it's accessible to you to reach the right leg up, your butt needs to work like crazy to support it. Bend the right knee, squeeze it into the belly, push back through the foot. 2 more times, only if this is feeling like the right work for you. Turn to face the ground, so you're in tabletop position at the front of the mat. Turn the knees in, the toes open once again, and we'll continue with cat-cows here, moving through the entire spine. You want your arms and your legs to feel like really strong posts for your spine to move in between. Really feel the shoulder blades. Oh, yeah. Move. So that when you come to your back bend, you want to feel shoulder blades together, like the armpit, like the ribs are really sinking down between the armpits. Now pull up your navel, pull up your sideways, step the feet back nice and long so you're in plank. Tap the knees down. Keep the shoulder blades coming together as you bend the elbows and lower to the floor. Release and relax down here. Slide the hands back just a little bit. Roll the shoulders away from the ground and just kind of see and sense how you feel down here. Begin to lift the chest ever so slightly for a low cobra and then come back down. Using the tool of repetition to teach you about where to move more and where to move less, where are your green lights and where are your red lights. Press into your hands, push up to the knees, tuck the toes, and begin to walk back for our final foot stretch. So starting to see how this feels. And as you walk yourself back, get centered on your toes. So like sometimes our shoes will push our toes into a different alignment than they would like to be in. So we use our practice to stretch them out, get the heel right up over the toes. Alrighty, let's go ahead and come into a restful position. And this is where you gotta pick something for yourself that's gonna feel just unmistakably nice. That might even be getting up on your couch or resting with your shins up on your ottoman. That's like one of my favorite things to do. In Shavasana, your work might not necessarily be to be still. Sometimes your Shavasana is about little adjustments, even sometimes little fidgeting, if that's what the nervous system needs. And every day that you come here and you do this, it's going to be different. And so what we're really looking to do is cultivate an understanding of all of our body's messaging and signaling so that we can make choices that lead to a sense of peace and calmness and a feeling of freedom. I invite you to join me in a seated position for a few moments of silent sitting. So if you'd like that, you can begin to move around a little bit in any way that's going to feel good to you. And when you come to sit silently, either here or at other moments of your day, your work is to not try and control your mind or stop your thoughts or change your thoughts. Your work is to see clearly what the thoughts are as they happen. Because where we get into trouble a lot of times in life is that we don't have this practice. And so we're having thoughts that are just below the threshold of us paying attention to them. And they end up producing all of this emotional turmoil in us that sometimes is very hard to name. Sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what it is we're feeling or what triggered it or why we're feeling that way. And so your work here is simply trying to match up your attention with the moment that something happens so that you never get confused later on, like, where did it all go wrong? That's really what this time helps us with. Before we wrap up, I'd like to say a quick thank you to everybody who's donated to us here at Yoga in Your Living Room. Thank you so very much. Every time you donate, we get a notification and it totally makes our day. And it definitely makes us feel like we're plugged into a greater community. So thank you so much for that. If you've done that, if you haven't done that and you're thinking about doing it, we'd love to see your name pop through our inbox. So you can go over to yogainyourlivingroom.com/donate to give us a donation, and we thank you very much for that. Alrighty, my friend, hope you have a good session sitting here quietly on your own, and that you've learned a little bit more about your body and you're able to find your work on your own in the future. Have a wonderful day.